This is what scientists say will happen to the world 10,000 years into the future. Peering into the future is a uniquely human thing to do. Since the advent of science fiction, as a species we've looked forward in time, attempting to figure out what the next part of our time on Earth will be like. But it isn't just fiction that looks ahead. Now scientists have given us a glimpse at what the world we live in could look like millennia down the line. But the picture painted by the researchers and experts isn't the utopia that some of us might have been hoping for. In fact, it looks very much like the next 10,000 years of the human race are going to present our species with some very difficult circumstances. And that's without bringing the Doomsday Argument into the equation. The far future is a place where authors and filmmakers have allowed their imaginations to run wild. While some of these flights of fancy are unlikely to come to pass, others skirt much closer to the predictions that the experts have made about what our future on this planet might look like. And those predictions are pretty apocalyptic. According to an episode of long-running British TV program Doctor Who, 10,000 years in the future a reborn Empire of Rome will be in charge of running most of the planet. That's one of the more far-out suggestions that fiction has offered up, but it's by no means the strangest. That honor probably belongs to the classic animated series Futurama. In that show's timeline, a number of different civilizations rise and fall over the next 10,000 years. These include empires built by humans, monkeys, birds, farm animals and huge slithering slug monsters. In the end though, humans retain their position as the dominant species, albeit in a world filled with aliens, mutants and wisecracking robots. Elsewhere, a good deal of fiction focuses on the invention of AI, or artificial intelligence, and the changes that might mean for the future of life on Earth. Isaac Asimov's short story The Last Question ponders the future of human evolution through a query posed to successive generations of powerful computers, for example. However, the future of the planet is likely to be dominated by one major factor: climate change. According to a report in the journal Nature Climate Change, presented by a number of eminent climate scientists, the biggest differences over the next 10,000 years are likely to rise from changes to the planet caused by the actions that we're taking right now. And there's a chance that we've already too far gone to make any difference to them. In the report, 22 researchers wrote about how the future could well play out. In this excerpt from the Washington Post, the scientists spell out their ideas. In particular, they have said, the next few decades offer a brief window of opportunity to minimize large-scale and potentially catastrophic climate change that will extend longer than the entire history of human civilization thus far. To give you some idea of what that means, most historians believe human civilization began with the agricultural revolution. That started around 10,000 years BCE. In other words, the potential changes we're creating with our use of fossil fuels now could well affect the world for the next 10 millennia, if not longer. And there's a very good reason for that. Man-made climate change is caused by carbon dioxide, CO2, being released into the atmosphere. While there are processes in nature that get rid of that carbon dioxide, we're emitting so much that those processes are going to take an awfully long time to get rid of it all. The numbers here are actually rather startling. In the report, the researchers state that the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere isn't just something we need to worry about for 10,000 years. A considerable fraction of the carbon emitted to date and in the next 100 years will remain in the atmosphere for tens to hundreds of thousands of years. The question is though, what are the changes that this carbon dioxide creates actually going to look like? The largest difference is likely to be the sea. That's because, if climate change continues unchecked, we can expect the average temperature of the planet to be 7 degrees hotter than it is right now. What does that mean in practice? Well, according to the report, it would see an increase in the sea level of up to 170 feet. There'd be no ice in Greenland anymore, and Antarctica alone would contribute over 145 feet of the ensuing rise in sea levels. And that brings us back to the Doomsday Argument. The argument is a reasonably complex one, but to understand it in its simplest terms is reasonably easy. Essentially, it posits that the human race is doomed and wonders whether we're doomed in the near or the far future. Using a mathematical equation based on the number of people who've ever lived and the potential number of people who ever will, it comes to a pretty grim conclusion. And that prediction is this: within less than 10,000 years, there's a 95% chance that the human race will be completely wiped out. It's a little more complex than that, and there are plenty of variables that still need to be added. But it's certainly a sobering thought when we look to the possibilities for the future of our species. The predictions of the Doomsday Argument certainly seem to be in line with the potential future sketched out by scientists in this most recent report. And according to Anders Leverman, an expert in possible rises in sea level from the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, the findings in the report have certainly made scientists sit up and take notice. If you just look at this, it's stunning that we can make such a long-lasting impact that has the same magnitude as the Ice Ages, Leverman told the Washington Post, adding, "Hundreds of years from now, people will look back and say, yeah, the sea level is rising, it will continue to rise, we live with a constant rise of sea level because of people 200 years ago." And even with more modest predictions about the amount of CO2 that's likely to be released in the coming years, the picture doesn't get all that rosier. With just a 2-degree rise in temperature, the sea levels could still increase to over 80 feet higher than they are today. Those numbers arise from a prediction of CO2 emissions that are lower than those set out in the 2015 Paris Accord. So is this future inevitable? Well, there's clearly a movement within the scientific community to highlight the potential catastrophe that lies in wait for the human race. It's pushing that movement into the mainstream that's the next hurdle to overcome. But some remnants of humanity are likely to remain even if that doesn't happen. While our species might be in danger, some of the objects we've sent into space are likely to outlast us. The Voyager spacecraft, for example, will drift happily through the depths of interstellar space for thousands of years to come. The choice now is whether we want to be around as well.